Hey, life groups, I'm so glad that you are getting together this week because this past weekend was Fullness weekend and it was incredible. What a great time we had pressing into the presence, the fullness of God through worship and prayer. Friday night, we had a guest speaker that came in, Mylan Anderson, my friend, a great pastor, had a phenomenal message. If you missed that, you need to go back and watch that. It's on our app and on our website. Saturday night, we had prayer and worship and 6 people got baptized, took that important step in their faith. And on Sunday, we pressed into a difficult topic that affects every single one of us in our fear. And I know that a lot of people had healing and encouragement in that time together on Sunday. Fullness was incredible. We're going to do it again in February, so make sure to be there for that. All right, I have 2 important pieces of information for you about this week. One is we have a $100,000 match that was given for our new home towards the sanctuary goal. And so everything being given towards the building up until December 31st is being doubled by this match. So thank you for your generosity in partnering with us to not only build this new home, but to truly make it a home for us as a church. The second thing I want you to know about is this coming weekend, November 2nd, that Sunday, is a vision weekend for us. Something we're going to start doing now once a year where we talk about who we are as a church and have clarity on our mission and our values and our vision and where we're going. And I'm really excited to introduce some new language this week for us as a church that's really going to frame up the next several decades of where we're going as a church. So be sure to be there on Sunday for our Vision Weekend. All right, let's recap the message from Sunday. We talked about fear, the reality that we all face in feeling fear as an emotion, but how it is out of balance and often manipulated in our culture and our society. We looked at Gideon, a man in the Bible who is hiding in fear when we first meet him, but becomes this great warrior for God because God shows up and calls him into that. And Gideon had to learn to not run to his bad fear that was all around his culture, but to have a good, healthy fear of God. And so we laid out the difference between bad fear and good fear. And so here was the acrostic for bad fear. It is a frantic spiral, the anxiety, the stress, the spinning the wheels in our mind, this negative narrative spiral downward that we get stuck in, this frantic spiral. And it was also an empathetic paralysis of the danger of empathy, of getting stuck in our empathy and wanting to please others because we're afraid of what could happen to them or what they'd think of us if we weren't there, but really we're just hurting ourselves, and our fear is driving that. And abuse and terrible things happen because of that. We also looked at anger and how really the root of a lot of anger is truly fear. People are trying to control others and they don't know how to, and so they force submission through their anger. Or commonly, people have not done what they're supposed to do. They've abdicated their responsibilities because of idolatry, because of other things that's on the throne of their heart and their life. And it leads them to this blame game and blaming others, and it's their fault, they're not good enough. And it leads to anger, but the root of it is fear. And then we looked at how living a reactive lifestyle because of the fears of others, especially if you're in a leadership role or just leading your family, leading in your marriage and your workplace, how if we're just reactive to other people's fears, we're not really leading at all. We're being led by fear, and we're following the herd mentality. And we need to be proactive in our life and not just reactive, because when we are cowardly, it's contagious to others, whether we're a leader or not. And we saw examples of that from Scripture. And then we laid out what is the good fear, that it begins with a healthy respect and reverence of who God is and knowing and trusting then him to be God. And so good fear, the acrostic is this: faith elevates, adjusts our reality. Faith elevates and adjusts our reality. Our experience of God in our life, our whole life is different because of our faith. And so yes, we have faith over fear, but our faith is not in our faith. Our faith is in God and the character and the nature of who God is. So we're not just overly optimistic and hoping things work out. We're trusting in God to be God, that we're living out our beliefs in our life. That's really what faith is. And so because of that, then we turn the what ifs into God will. We take the what ifs and the this could happen, the oh no, and what if this and what if that. We take that and we turn it into God will, into a trust of who God is and who he will continue to be for us. Good, healthy fear begins with faith, and that elevates our priorities. It changes our perspective in life, and we live in view of eternity. And so the stuff in this life that we could be afraid of isn't that big of a deal because we live in view of eternity, and it adjusts then our view of the culture around us and how we interact and how we then can stand for truth and not just go with the flow because we're afraid of what everyone will think of us. And it changes our reality and what we live and what we experience in this life because of our connection to God. That's a good, healthy fear. I want to read this verse. It's one of the ones that we read on Sunday. It's Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. You see, the secret, the solution to overcoming our fear, the bad fear that's all around our culture that gets pushed on us, the secret, the solution is to simply be with God and to know that God is with us wherever we go. And because of that, we can stand strong and courageous. You see, the solution is to chase God's presence instead of letting fear chase your presence. Instead of letting fear permeate your life and be the present reality you're experiencing all the time, we need to instead chase the presence of God because that's where the peace of God is. And when you live life with the peace of God, then the fears that get pushed on you, you're not going to react to it. The fears going to come up that makes you be angry or have this empathy that's going to paralyze you. All that stuff gets minimized because you're living and staying in the peace of God. All right, bonus content on the message. I want to get more into the how, the practical side, and I really hope that this is where you spend a lot of your time in discussion together in your life group. But for me, I remember one of the times that I felt the most real, overwhelming fear in my life was when we had our first child, Selah, and she was a little baby, and she was sleeping in my arms, and I was going to put her in her crib for the first time and leave her in there. And I was just overwhelmed with anxiety and worry about her and what could happen to her while I'm not right there with her. That was a very real moment that I've experienced with my kids now that I have 3 of them and they've aged and I'm praying over them all the time, and I go through that and I can feel myself going back to that place of worry and the what if. And so what I've learned to do in those moments is not allow my mind to do that frantic spiral into imagining and letting my imagination come up with all these terrible things that could happen, and I instead cut that off and I picture myself handing my children over to God, to putting them at the cross. And I say, God, I trust you. And I trust you to watch over my children. And that's how I have overcome that fear and not let it become something that controls my life. You see, you have fears. You have different things that you worry about, things that are pushed on you, and you see the symptoms of your fear, be it anxiety, anger, being overly reactive and bounced around, or empathy that you're stuck in, all these things that we talked about. But I encourage you to seek after the presence of God. And so how do you do that? This is the bonus side of it. You seek after the presence of God by cultivating a prayer life, by spending time in prayer with God. Not just the quick little prayers, which you should do all the time when you have fears. That's what I was just saying. I do that. But I also have cultivated. I get up earlier than I have to, and I spend time in prayer with God. And that has changed my perspective. I start my day experiencing the peace of God. So then I go through all these stuff throughout the day, and I'm not thrown off or overwhelmed because it begins with the peace of God. And that's what I have found has helped me so much, and I encourage you to cultivate a prayer life, to make it a habit, a discipline in your life, to commit to it. And as you walk that out over time, you will see a huge change in your life. And you'll also do it through worship. And worship is not just what we do on Sunday mornings. That's the corporate worship experience as a church. But it's also you on your own on a Tuesday when you're overcoming fear, or on a Thursday that you can go to worship music. You can go to just singing to God, crying out to God through prayer, through worship, and seeking after Him and asking the Spirit to come and to be at work and to meet you in that place. And God does it. He shows up. And lastly, you experience it in the community of other believers, or the biblical word we use is fellowship. It's the connection of the spiritual believers that we're a part of in the spiritual body of Christ. And so you're getting this in your life group, and I encourage you to encourage one another that when you have fear overwhelming you, when you've reacted because of fear in some different ways, to bring that to your life group and to encourage and support one another, because that's the Spirit of God working through you to help each other. And that's how we overcome fear and don't let it run our life, and instead seek the presence of God. So there's your video for this week. Go ahead and enjoy your time together in your life group. Love you all. God bless you. We'll see you Sunday.